as we're finishing up the book of Exodus here, we're going to start in about 4 chapters. We're going to start the book of Leviticus. But one thing I'm just noticing as we're reading here is just how detail-oriented God is, and also He's given these people the skills. It's not like He's just told them what He wanted and let them go. Kind of like how we feel overwhelmed sometimes in life, when we're supposed to do all this stuff and then we don't know how we're going to do it, but we start doing it and it starts happening, and then all the things just start falling in line. That's kind of the overwhelming feeling that the people of Israel had. They had gone up the mountain, or they had watched Moses go up the mountain. Like I said the other day, it's like you can just see this thing. It's like a volcano that's erupting, but it's not sending lava down on the people. I'm sure they were scared. I can't imagine what they felt like. But while this is going on, the glory of the Lord is up there on the mountain for 40 days, and Moses has disappeared, and they haven't seen him. And they just kind of reverted back to what they knew. Now, I am making excuses for the Israelites because they're people like us. But, but that's not an excuse for people. When we realize what God is, we can't go back to the way that we were. Now, I know that they didn't realize what it was, but before Moses went up the mountain, he said, whatever you do, don't make no gods before me. I am your God. I am the God that brought you out of Egypt, and I'm going to establish this covenant with you, and I'm serious. And they said, yes, we will do everything you say. And then as soon as they just went back to what they know. Who knows what they learned in Egypt? I'm sure that's where the bull worshipping stuff came from, but man, it's incredible. So these craftsmen here that God has prepared, there's a craftsman and a teacher, and He's teaching people. Their task is to teach people how to do these things, to build these things. So let's keep reading. We're in chapter 36. So Bezalel and Oholiab and every skilled person to whom the Lord has given skill and ability to know how to carry out all the work of constructing the sanctuary, are told to do the work just as the Lord had commanded. I'm sorry, I was just thinking about, how little sea turtles that get left on the beach, they know exactly what to do. And they know to do it quickly because the birds are coming. It's kind of like that. The people who are skilled in things. If you are skilled in things, you've probably practiced it a lot, but a lot of people are just skilled, and this is cool. I'm sorry, I need to keep going. Verse 2. Then Moses summoned Bezalel and Oholiab, and every skilled person whom the Lord had given ability to, and who was willing to come and do the work. They received from Moses all the offerings the Israelites had brought to carry out the work of constructing the sanctuary, and all the people continued to bring free will offerings, and morning after morning. So all the skilled workers who were doing all the work on the sanctuary left what they were doing, and said to Moses, the people are bringing more than enough for doing the work the Lord commanded to be done. Then Moses gave an order, and they sent his word throughout the camp. No man or woman is to make anything else as an offering for the sanctuary. And so the people were restrained from bringing more, because what they had already had was more than enough to do all the work. That's amazing. Verse 8. All those who were skilled among the workers made the tabernacle with the 10 curtains of finely twisted linen, and blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, with cherubim woven into them by expert hands. All the curtains were the same size, 20 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. They joined 5 of the curtains together and did the same with the other 5. Then they made loops of blue material according to the edge of the end curtain to set on in one set, and the same was done on the other end curtain on the other set. So they made 50 loops on one curtain and 50 loops on the end curtain of the other set, with the loops opposite each other. Then they made 50 gold clasps and used them to fasten the two sets of curtains together so that the tabernacle was a unit. They made curtains of goat hair for the tent of the tabernacle, 11 altogether. All 11 curtains were the same size, 30 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. They joined 5 of the curtains into one set and the other 6 into another set, and then they made 50 loops along the edge of the curtain in one set, and along the edge of the end curtain in the other set. They made 50 bronze clasps to fasten the tent together as a unit. And then they made for the tent a covering of ram skins dyed red, and over that covering of the other durable leather. Verse 20. They made upright frames of acacia wood for the tabernacle. Each frame was 10 cubits long and a ten and a half wide, with two projections set parallel to each other. They made all the frames of the tabernacle in this way. They made 20 frames for the south side of the tabernacle, and they made 40 silver bases to go under them, 2 bases for each frame, one under each projection. For the other side, the north side of the tabernacle, they made 20 frames, and 40 silver bases, and 2 under each frame. They made 6 frames for the far end, that is the west end of the tabernacle. And 2 frames were made for the four corners of the tabernacle at the far end. Verse 29. At these 2 corners the frames were doubled from the bottom all the way to the top and fitted into a single ring. Both of them were made alike. So there were 8 frames and 16 silver bases, 2 under each frame. So they made verse 31. They also made crossbars of acacia wood, 5 for the frames on one side of the tabernacle, and 5 for those on the other side, and 5 for the frames on the west at the far end of the tabernacle. They made the center crossbar so that it extended from end to end at the middle of the frames. They overlaid the frames with gold and made gold rings to hold the crossbars. So they also overlaid the crossbars with gold. They made the curtain of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and finely twisted linen, with cherubim woven into by a skilled worker. They made 4 posts of acacia wood for it, and overlaid them with gold. They made gold hooks for them, and cast their 4 silver bases. For the entrance to the tent, they made a curtain of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and finely twisted linen, the work of an embroiderer, and they made 5 posts with the hooks for them. They overlaid the tops of the posts and their bands with gold, and made their 5 bases of bronze. Verse 37, or chapter 37, sorry. Bezalel made the ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, a cubit and a half wide, and a cubit and a half high. He overlaid it with pure gold, both sides in and out, and made gold molding around it. He cast 4 gold rings for it, and fastened them to its 4 feet. And with 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other, they made the poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold, and inserted the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry it. He made the atonement cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long, and 1.5 cubits wide. And then he made 2 cherubim out of hammered gold at the ends of the covering of the cover. He made one cherub on one end, and the second cherub on the other. At the 2 ends he made them of one piece with the cover. The cherubim had their wings spread upward, overshadowing the cover with them. The cherubim faced each other, looking toward the cover. Verse 10. They made the table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Then they overlaid it with pure gold, and made a gold molding around it. They also made a rim around, made it a rim a handbreadth wide, and put a gold molding on the rim. They cast 4 gold rings for the table, and fastened them to the 4 corners, where the 4 legs were. The rings were put close to the rim to hold the poles used in carrying the table. The poles for carrying the table were made of acacia wood, and were overlaid with gold, and they made from pure gold the articles for the table, its plates and dishes and bowls, and its pitchers for the pouring of the drink offerings. Verse 17. They made the lampstand out of pure gold. They hammered out its base and shaft, and made its flower-like cups, buds, and blossoms of one piece with them. 6 branches extending from the sides of the lamp, 3 on one side and 3 on the other. 3 cups shaped like almond flowers with buds and blossoms were on one branch, 3 on the next branch, and then the same for all 6 branches extending from the lampstand. And on the other lampstand there were four cups shaped like almond flowers with buds and blossoms. 1 bud was under the first pair of branches extending from the lampstand, a 2nd bud under the 2nd pair, and a 3rd bud under the 3rd pair. 6 branches in all. The buds and the branches were all of one piece with the lampstand, hammered out of pure gold. They made it 7 lamps, as well as its wick trimmers and trays of pure gold. They made the lampstand with all its accessories from 1 talent of pure gold. Verse 25. And they made the altar of incense out of acacia wood. It was square, 1 cubit long and 1 cubit wide, and 2 cubits high, its horns of one piece with it. They overlaid the top and all the sides and the horns with pure gold, and they made a gold molding around it. They made 2 gold rings below the molding, 2 on each of the opposite sides, to hold the poles used to carry it. They made the poles out of acacia wood, and overlaid them with gold. Verse 29. They also made the sacred anointing oil, and perfume, and the pure, fragrant pure, fragrant incense, the work of a perfumer. Take a drink. Verse 38, or chapter 38. They built the altar of burnt offering of acacia wood, 3 cubits high. It was square, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. They made a horn at each of the 4 corners, so that the horns of the altar were of one piece, and they overlaid the altar with bronze. And they made all its utensils of bronze, its pots, its shovels, its sprinkling bowls, meat forks, and fire pans. They made a grating for the altar, a bronze network to be under its ledge, halfway up the altar. They cast bronze rings to hold the poles for the 4 corners of the bronze grating. They made the poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with bronze. They inserted the poles into the rings so that they would be on the sides of the altar for carrying it. They made it hollow out of boards. Verse 8. They made the bronze basin and its bronze stands from the mirrors of the women who served at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Verse 9. Next they made the courtyard. The south side was 100 cubits long, and curtains of finely twisted linen, with 20 posts and 20 bronze bases, with silver hooks, and bands on the posts. The north side was also 100 cubits long, and it had 20 posts, the 20 bronze bases with silver hooks and bands on the posts. The west end was 50 cubits wide, and had curtains. The 10 posts and 10 basins with silver hooks and bands on the posts. The east end, toward the sunrise, there was also 50 cubits wide. Curtains 15 cubits long were on one side of the entrance, with 3 posts and 3 bases, and curtains 15 cubits long were on the other side of the entrance to the courtyard, with 3 posts and 3 bases. All the curtains around the courtyard were of finely twisted linen. The bases for the posts were bronze. The hooks and bands on the posts were silver, and the tops were overlaid with silver. So all the posts of the courtyard had silver bands. Verse 18. The curtain for the entrance to the courtyard was made of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and finely twisted linen, the work of an embroiderer. It was 20 cubits long, like the curtains of the courtyard, 5 cubits high, and with 4 posts and 4 bronze bases. Their hooks and bands were silver, and their tops were overlaid with silver, and all the tent pegs of the tabernacle and of the surrounding courtyard were bronze. Verse 21. These are the amounts of the materials used for the tabernacle of the covenant law, which were recorded with at Moses' command by the Levites under the direction of Ithamar, son of Aaron, the priest. Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, made everything the Lord commanded Moses. With him was Aholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, an engraver and designer and embroiderer in blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and fine linen. The total amount of the gold from the wave offering used for all the work on the sanctuary was 29 talents and 370 shekels, according to the sanctuary shekel. Verse 25. The silver obtained from those of the community who were counted in the census was 100 talents and 1,775 shekels, according to the sanctuary shekel. 1 bekah per person, that is, half a shekel, according to the sanctuary shekel, from everyone who had crossed over to those counted 20 years old or more, a total of 603,550 men. The 100 talents of silver were used to cast the bases for the sanctuary and the curtain, and for the curtain 100 bases from the 100 talents, 1 talent for each base. They used 1,775 shekels to make the hooks for the posts, and to overlay the tops of the posts, and to make their bands. Verse 29. The bronze from the wave offering was 70 talents and 2,400 shekels. They used it to make the bases for the entrance to the tent of meeting, the bronze altar and its bronze grating, with all the utensils, and the bases for the surrounding courtyard, and those for its entrance, and all the tent pegs for the tabernacle, and those for the surrounding courtyard. Chapter 39. From the blue, purple, and scarlet yarn they were made woven garments for the ministering in the sanctuary. They also made sacred garments for Aaron, and as the Lord commanded Moses. The ephod. Verse 2. They made the ephod of gold, and of blue, and purple, and scarlet yarn, and of finely twisted linen. They hammered out thin sheets of gold, and cut strands to be worked into the blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and fine linen, the work of skilled hands. They made shoulder pieces for the ephod, which were attached to the two of the corners, so it could be fastened. Its skillfully woven waistband was like it, of one piece with the ephod, and made with gold and with blue and purple and scarlet yarn, and with finely twisted linen, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 6. They mounted the onyx stones in gold filigree settings and engraved them like a seal with the names of the sons of Israel. They fastened them onto the shoulder pieces of the ephod as memorial stones for the sons of Israel, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 8. They fashioned the breastpiece, the work of a skilled craftsman. They made it like the ephod, of gold, blue, and purple, and scarlet yarn, and of finely twisted linen. It was square, a span long and a span wide, and it folded double. And then they mounted 4 rows of precious stones on it. The first row was carnelian, chrysolite, and beryl. The second row was turquoise, lapis lazuli, and emerald. The third row was jacinth, agate, and amethyst. The fourth row was topaz, onyx, and jasper. They were mounted in gold filigree settings, and there were 12 stones, one for each of the names of the sons of Israel, each engraved like a seal with the name of the 12 tribes. Verse 15. For the breastpiece they made braided chains of pure gold like a rope. They made 2 gold filigree settings with 2 gold rings, and they fastened the rings of the 2 corners of the breastpiece. They fastened the 2 gold chains to the rings of the corners of the breastpiece, and the other ends of the chains with the 2 settings attached them to the shoulder pieces of the ephod at the front. They made 2 gold rings and attached them to the other 2 corners of the breastpiece on the inside edge next to the ephod. Then they made 2 more gold rings and attached them to the bottom of the shoulder pieces on the front of the ephod, close to the seam, just above the waistband of the ephod. They tied the rings of the breastpiece to the rings of the ephod with blue cord, connecting it to the waistband, so that the breastpiece would not swing out from the ephod, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 22. They made the robe of the ephod entirely of blue cloth, the work of a weaver, with an opening in the center of the robe like the opening of a collar, and the band around its opening so that it would not tear. They made pomegranates of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and finely twisted linen around the hem of the robe. They made the bells of pure gold and attached them around the hem between the pomegranates. The bells and the pomegranates alternated around the hem of the robes to be worn for ministering, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 27. For Aaron and his sons they made tunics of fine linen, the work of a weaver, and the turban of fine linen, and the linen caps with the undergarments of finely twisted linen. The sash was made of finely twisted linen and of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, the work of an embroiderer. As the Lord commanded Moses, they made the plate, the scarlet emblem, out of pure gold, and engraved it like an inscription on a seal, holy to the Lord. Then they fastened a blue cord to it and attached it to the turban, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 32. So all the work on the tabernacle and the tent of meeting was completed. The Israelites did everything just as the Lord commanded Moses. Then they brought the tabernacle to Moses, and the tent and all its furnishing, its clasps, frames, crossbars, posts, bases, the covering of ram skins dyed red, and the covering of another durable leather, and the shielding curtain, and the ark of the covenant of the law with its poles and the atonement cover and the table with all its articles and the bread of the presence and the pure gold lamp with its rows of lamps and all its accessories, and the olive oil for the light, and the gold altar, and the anointing oil, the fragrant incense, and the curtain for the entrance to the tent. The bronze altar with its bronze grating and its poles and all its utensils, and the basin with its stand, the curtains of the courtyard with its post and the bases, and the curtain for the entrance to the courtyard, and the ropes and tent pegs for the courtyard, and all the furnishings for the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, and woven garments worn for ministering in the sanctuary, and both sacred garments for Aaron the priest, and the garments for his sons when serving as priests. Verse 42. The Israelites had done all the work of just as the Lord commanded Moses. Moses inspected the work and saw that they had done it, just as the Lord commanded. So Moses blessed them. Chapter 40. Then the Lord said to Moses, Set up the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, on the first day of the first month. Place the ark of the covenant of the law in it, and shield the ark with the curtain. Bring in the table, and set out what belongs on it, and then bring in the lampstand and set up the lamps. Place the gold altar of incense in front of the ark of the covenant law, and put the curtain at the entrance to the tabernacle. Verse 6. Place the altar of burnt offering in front of the entrance to the tabernacle, the tent of meeting. Place the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and put water in it. Set the courtyard around, and put the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard. Make the anointing oil, and anoint the tabernacle and everything in it. Consecrate it and all its furnishings, and it will be holy. Then anoint the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils, and consecrate the altar, and it will be most holy. Verse 11. Anoint the basin and its stands, and consecrate them. Bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and wash them with water. Then dress Aaron in the sacred garments, and anoint him and consecrate him, so that he may serve me as a priest. Bring his sons and dress them in tunics. Anoint them just as you anointed their father, so that they may serve me as priests. Their anointing will be a priesthood that will continue through their generations. Moses did everything just as the Lord commanded him. Verse 17. So the tabernacle was set up on the first day of the first month of the second year. When Moses set up the tabernacle, he put the bases in place and erected the frames and inserted the crossbars and set up the posts. Then he spread the tent over the tabernacle and put the covering over the tent, just as the Lord commanded him. Verse 20. He took the tablets of the covenant law and placed them in the ark, and attached the poles to the ark and put the atonement cover on it, over it. And then he brought the ark into the tabernacle and hung the shielding curtain and shielded the ark of the covenant law, just as the Lord commanded him. Verse 22. Moses placed the table in the tent of meeting on the north side of the tabernacle outside the curtain, and set the bread on it before the Lord, as the Lord commanded him. He placed the lampstand in the tent of meeting opposite the table on the south side of the tabernacle, and set it up on the lamps before the Lord, as the Lord commanded him. Verse 26. Moses placed the gold altar in the tent of meeting in front of the curtain, and burned fragrant incense on it, as the Lord commanded him. Then he put put up the curtain at the entrance to the tabernacle. He set the altar of burnt offering near the entrance to the tabernacle to the tent of meeting, and offered it on a burnt offerings, and offered on it burnt offerings and grain offerings, as the Lord commanded him. He placed the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and put water in it for washing. Then Moses and Aaron and his sons used it to wash their hands and feet. They washed whenever they entered the tent of meeting or approached the altar, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 33. Then Moses set up the courtyard around the tabernacle and the altar, and put up the curtains at the entrance to the courtyard, and so Moses finished the work. Verse 34. Then the cloud covering the tent of meeting, and the Lord of glory filled the tabernacle. Moses could never enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled on it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. In all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud had lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. But if the cloud did not lift, they did not set out until the day it lifted. So the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night, in the sight of all the Israelites during all their travels. All right, well we're done with Exodus. That's awesome. Good job, everybody. We're doing a good job. Now Leviticus is a whole nother animal. It's a difficult book to read. I can't lie. And it's the place a lot of people stop reading the Bible through. We're not going to do that. I'm going to help you power through it. We're going to get through it together. I'm reading it too. I'm reading every word. I'm reading every word of this Bible from cover to cover. Now, that's not exactly true, because I didn't read these first few really boring pages that aren't Bible at all. But we are reading all of the book. Okay, Genesis to Revelation. Okay, and Leviticus is in there. And like I said, we need to be looking for character and personality of God. We've only got a few chapters to go here today, and today's video is really long, so I'm just going to jump right into it. Leviticus chapter 1, verse 1. And also, if you haven't watched the Bible Project video, that would really help to pause the video and go watch that before we jump into it, because it's so hard just to wrap your mind around the procedures that God is laying forth. And listen, these laws are not laws for us to follow in our time today. These are laws and ordinances for a culture, for an ancient culture in a different time. And even the Jews don't practice this stuff today. So they want to, but it's just not the time anymore. They probably won't again. I don't know where you fall in your doctrine and stuff, or what you think about all that, but it's all really up in the air, and it's up with what people will do. So let's jump right in. Leviticus chapter 1, verse 1. The Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, and he said, Speak to the Israelites and say to them, When anyone among you brings an offering to the Lord, bring as your offering an animal from either the herd or the flock. Verse 3, If the offering is a burnt offering from the herd, you are to offer a male without defect. You must present it at the entrance to the tent of meeting, so that it will be acceptable to the Lord. If you are to lay your hand on the head of the burnt offering, you are to lay your hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it will be accepted on your behalf to make atonement for you. You are to slaughter the young bull before the Lord, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall bring the blood and splash it against the sides of the altar at the entrance to the tent of meeting. You are to skin the burnt offering and cut it into pieces. So the sons of Aaron, the priests, are to put fire on the altar and arrange wood on the fire. Then Aaron's sons, the priests, shall arrange the pieces, including the head and the fat, on the wood that is burning on the altar. You are to wash the internal organs and legs with water, and the priest is to burn all of it on the altar. It is a burnt offering, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. If the offering is a burnt offering from the flock, either from sheep or the goats, you are to offer a male without defect. You are to slaughter it at the north side of the altar before the Lord, and Aaron's sons the priests shall splash its blood against the sides of the altar. You are to cut it into pieces, and the priest shall arrange them, including the head and the fat, on the wood that is burning on the altar. You are to wash the internal organs and the legs with water, and the priest is to bring all of them and burn them on the altar. It is a burnt offering, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. Verse 14. If the offering to the Lord is a burnt offering of birds, you are to offer a dove or a young pigeon. The priest shall bring it to the altar, wring off the head, and burn it on the altar. Its blood shall be drained out on the side of the altar. He is to remove the crop and the feathers, and throw them down east of the altar, where the ashes are. He shall tear it open by the wings, not dividing it completely, and then the priest shall burn it on the wood that is an offering that is burning on the altar. It is a burnt offering, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. Chapter 2. When anyone brings a grain offering to the Lord, their offering is to be of the finest flour. They are to pour olive oil on it, put incense on it, and take it to Aaron's sons, the priests. The priest shall take a handful of the flour and oil together with all the incense, and burn it as a memorial portion on the altar, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. The rest of the grain offering belongs to Aaron and his sons. It is a most holy part of the food offering presented to the Lord. If you bring a grain offering baked in an oven, it is to consist of the finest flour, either thick loaves made without yeast and with olive oil mixed in, or thin loaves made without yeast and brushed with olive oil. If your grain offering is to be prepared on a griddle, it is to be made of the finest flour and mixed with oil, without yeast. Crumble it and pour oil onto it. It is a grain offering. If your grain offering is cooked in a pan, it is to be made of the finest flour and some olive oil. Bring the grain offering made of these things to the Lord, and present it to the priest, who shall take it to the altar, and he shall take it out the memorial portion from the grain offering, and burn it on the altar as food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. The rest of the grain offering belongs to Aaron and his sons, as it is a most holy part of the food offerings presented to the Lord. Verse 11. Every grain offering you bring to the Lord must be made without yeast, for you are not to burn any yeast or honey in a food offering presented to the Lord. You may bring them to the Lord as an offering of the first fruits, but they are not to be offered on the altar as a pleasing aroma. Verse 13. Season all your grain offerings with salt. Do not leave the salt of the covenant of your God out of your grain offerings. Add salt to all your offerings. Verse 14. If you bring a grain offering of first fruits to the Lord, offer crushed heads of new grain roasted in the fire. Put oil and incense on it. It is a grain offering. The priest shall burn the memorial portion of the crushed grain, and of the oil together with all the incense as a food offering presented to the Lord. Chapter 3. If your offering is a fellowship offering, you offer an animal from the herd, whether male or female, you are to present before the Lord an animal without defect. You are to lay your hand on the head of your offering and slaughter it at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Then Aaron's sons, the priests, shall splash the blood against the sides of the altar. From the fellowship offering you are to bring a food offering to the Lord, the internal organs and all the fat connected to them, both the kidneys and the fat from near the loins, and the long lobe of the liver, which you will remove with the kidneys. And then Aaron's sons are to burn it on the altar, on top of the wood of the burnt offering that is lying on the wood burning. It is a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. Verse 6. If you offer an animal from the flock as a fellowship offering to the Lord, you are to offer a male or female without defect. If you are to offer a lamb, you are to present it before the Lord, laying your hand on its head, and slaughter it in front of the tent of meeting. Then Aaron's sons shall splash its blood against the sides of the altar. From the fellowship offering you are to bring a food offering to the Lord. Its fat, its entire fat tail cut close to the backbone, the internal organs, and all the fat that is connected to them, both kidneys with the fat on them near the loins, and the long lobe of the liver, which you will remove with the kidneys. The priest shall burn them on the altar as a food offering presented to the Lord. Verse 12. If your offering is a goat, you are to present it before the Lord. Lay your hand on its head, and slaughter it in front of the tent of meeting. Then Aaron's sons shall splash its blood against the sides of the altar. From what you offer, you are to present this food offering to the Lord, the internal organs and all the fat that is connected to them, both kidneys with the fat on them near the loins, and the long lobe of the liver, which you will remove with the kidneys. The priest shall burn them on the altar as a food offering, a pleasing aroma. All the fat is the Lord's. Verse 17. This is a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. Wherever you live, you must not eat any fat or any blood. Chapter 4. The Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, when anyone sins unintentionally and does what is forbidden in any of the Lord's commands." Verse 3. If the anointed priest sins, bringing guilt on the people, he must bring the Lord a young bull without defect as a sin offering for the sin he has committed. He is to present the bull at the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord. He is to lay his hand on its head and slaughter it before the Lord. Then the anointed priest shall take some of the bull's blood and carry it to the tent of meeting. He is to dip his finger into the blood and sprinkle some of it 7 times before the Lord in front of the curtain of the sanctuary. The priest shall then put some blood on the horns of the altar and of fragrant incense that is before the Lord in the tent of meeting. The rest of the bull's blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering that is the entrance to the tent of meeting. He shall remove all the fat from the bull of the sin offering, and all that is fat is connected to the internal organs, both kidneys with the fat on them near the loins, and the long lobe of the liver, which he will remove from the kidneys, with the kidneys, just as the fat is removed from the ox, sacrificed as a fellowship offering. Then the priest shall burn them on the altar of burnt offerings. But hide the hide of the bull and all its flesh, as well as the head, behind the legs, and internal organs and intestines, that is, all the rest of the bull, he must take outside the camp to a place ceremonially clean, where the ashes are thrown, and to burn it in a wood fire on the ash heap. Verse 13. If the whole Israelite community sins unintentionally and does what is forbidden in any of the Lord's commands, even though the community is unaware of the matter, when they realize their guilt, and the sin they committed becomes known, the assembly must bring a young bull as a sin offering and present it before the tent of meeting. The elders of the community are to lay their hands on the bull's heads before the Lord, and the bull shall be slaughtered before the Lord. Then the anointed priests then the anointed priest is to take some of the bull's blood into the tent of meeting. He shall dip his finger into the blood and sprinkle it before the Lord 7 times in front of the curtain. He is to put some of the blood on the horns of the altar that is before the Lord in the tent of meeting. The rest of the blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering, at the entrance to the tent of meeting. He shall remove all the fat from it and burn it on the altar, and do with this bull just as he did with the bull for the sin offering. That is the way the priest will make atonement for the community, and they will make atonement for and they will be forgiven. Then he shall take the bull outside the camp and burn it as he burned the first bull. This is a sin offering for the community. Verse 22. When a leader sins unintentionally, and he does what is forbidden in any of the commands of the Lord, when he realizes the guilt and the sin he has committed, and it becomes known, he must bring as his offering a male goat without defect. He is to lay his hand on the goat's head and slaughter it at the place of the burnt offering that is slaughtered before the Lord. It is a sin offering. And then the priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. He shall burn all the fat of the altar as he burned the fat of the fellowship offering. In this way the priest will make atonement for the leader's sins, and he will be forgiven. Verse 27. If any member of the community sins unintentionally and does what is forbidden in any of the Lord's commands, when they realize their guilt and the sin they have committed becomes known, they must bring as their offering for the sin they have committed a female goat without defect. They are to lay their hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter it in the place of the burnt offering. Then the priest is to take some of the blood with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and pour the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. They shall remove all the fat that is just as the fat is removed from the fellowship offering, and the priest shall burn it on the altar as an aroma pleasing to the Lord. In this way the priest will make atonement for them, and they will be forgiven. Verse 32. If someone brings a lamb as their sin offering, they are to bring a female without defect. They are to lay their hand on its head and slaughter it for a sin offering at the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered. Then the priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and pour the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. They shall remove all the fat, just as the fat is removed from the lamb, the fellowship offering, and the priest shall burn it on the altar on top of the food offerings presented to the Lord. In this way the priest shall make atonement for them, for the sin that they have committed, and they will be forgiven. That's a lot of blood. I can't imagine the blood. I know why they had all that incense. I know they had to wash themselves, but golly. I'm glad we don't have to do all that. I'm so happy about Jesus. Jesus changed the world. They were doing that up to that time, too. There was periods where they didn't do anything, but golly. I can't imagine. Well, that's it for today. Chapter 5 tomorrow. Here, check this out. I'm going to make my little mark on my thing. We are done with day 7. We're a week in. So, if you have questions, we're gonna summarize this reading that we did, and kind of gonna explain some of what we've read through Genesis, Exodus, and probably not really get into Leviticus very much. But Thursday evening, I'm going to do a live video, and if y'all have questions, it'll probably be about 5 o'clock Eastern Time, Thursday evening. Ask questions in the chat, and we can have some Q&A time and stuff like that. But if not, it can just be a short little chat, and we'll summarize what we've read and just talk about it a little bit. Well, I'm still enjoying this. It's awesome. I love to sit right here and read. It's amazing. Even Leviticus, it's awesome. There's a lot of repetition. It's a lot of over and over again. All right, guys. Have a good one. Love you. See you tomorrow.